If you have any questions or ideas that you want to share with us about teaching English in primary, please put them in the comments as well. We're happy to be here with people in the community on Facebook, but also with people on YouTube. So welcome all of you, and we're looking forward to talking about teaching English in primary. So Zaineb, there's been a lot of discussions this week, hasn't there, about different aspects of teaching primary learners. Lots of really nice comments from people sharing ideas, things like that. So one of the things that we talked about was what's the best thing about teaching English in primary. So what kind of comments did you see about that, Zainab?
Yeah, so, well, Steve, this is a very, very interesting topic, and I think a topic that a lot of teachers enjoy. And so we got quite a lot of interesting comments, some really nice ones as well. A lot of the teachers said that the best thing about teaching primary learners is how excited they are to use English. Also, their enthusiasm and how fast they learn as well. And the fact that they want to learn, unlike older students or adult learners who don't always, show that enthusiasm when it comes to learning. Also, how fun they are and how they love to play. But there were two comments that really stood out to me that I really, really liked. One of them was that one particular comment said that the best thing about teaching primary learners is the relationship that you have with your learners becomes similar to the relationship between a mother and her children. So that was something I thought was very nice. And also there was another comment that said the best thing about teaching primary learners is that it teaches you patience. So it teaches you this life skill that we all need. So yeah, there were some really great comments. Is there anything, Steve, that you particularly like about teaching young learners?
Well, I was actually going to relate it to the comment that you just made that came from the community about maybe that when you're teaching in primary, like the relationship thing can be really important. And I think sometimes when we're teaching maybe teens or adults, it's very much about teaching language. But when you're teaching primary learners, it can be more, it's more holistic. So you're teaching them not just how to speak English, but how to be good learners, how to also be good people to a certain extent. Like there is a kind of element of kind of socialization as well as learning. And I think that's actually a really nice aspect of it because it gives you something that you don't necessarily get from teaching other classes. So for me, yeah, that would definitely be a thing. And you mentioned as well, like about how the speed of learning is just, it's incredible to see.
It's visible.
Yeah.
You can actually see how much they improve.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And the pronunciation as well, obviously, because primary kids can pick up the pronunciation so quickly and so easily, and that's nice to see as well because it stays with them. So that's a really good thing. And how about you? What's your favorite thing about teaching primary?
I think my favorite thing would be how they are not afraid of making mistakes, and how they very confidently can give you the most bizarre answer sometimes and just be okay with it. So yeah, I think it just brings in so much energy, so much, imagination into the classroom. Whereas with, older children, they might be embarrassed, they feel shy, they don't want to make the mistake, they're afraid, others will laugh at them. Whereas younger children, they're okay with everybody laughing at some of their answers. So I think just how they respond with so much excitement, and their creativity is just, it's amazing.
Yeah, talking about creativity, I was thinking actually one thing that I used to do quite a lot with primaries is they could choose a name, so they didn't have to be themselves in the class, and that can kind of let them embody like a different character when you're teaching them. So I used to have like little name cards, and on there they would get points and things inside the card. But when they write their names, they could choose their names. So like sometimes you get like cartoon characters, famous superheroes, that kind of stuff. But it just makes it kind of makes it fun.
It does, yeah.
Yeah, and we've got a comment actually, which is we haven't actually mentioned it, but from YouTube, there's someone saying that young learners, primary learners, are full of natural curiosity, which is really good. Yeah, and they want to know about things. So that's great.
Exactly.
Okay, we've got
Which
people
makes it
from
easier for them to learn.
Yes, yeah, I completely agree. I completely agree. Okay, we've got people from Pakistan, from Saudi Arabia, Libya, Portugal, Peru, Romania, Senegal, and South Africa. So welcome everyone. It's nice to have you here. And as we said at the start, if you have questions that you want to ask about teaching English in primary, please go ahead, ask. We're happy to answer anything. Okay, so one of the other topics that came up, one of the kind of discussion posts in the community was about new teachers. So the question was, what advice would you give a new teacher about teaching English in primary? There were lots of nice ideas from the community for this, weren't there, Zaineb?
Yeah, there were. I think one that really stood out that many participants mentioned was creating a safe environment. Especially with young children, they need to feel safe. They need to be able to feel safe enough to answer questions, to reach out if they need help, to work with each other. And creating that environment, I think from the very beginning is very important to, allow students to understand and improve their language. So that goes back to the mother-child relationship. Another part, and other comments were also building a good bond, having good rapport, making sure that from the beginning you have that rapport with your students. There was one particular comment again was very interesting, which was love what you do, and I think that's important because young learners especially can really sense your energy. If you come in with that positive energy, they respond positively. And then if you come in with a negative energy, they will respond negatively. So if you are enjoying what you're doing, you are enjoying being with your students, you are enjoying the activity that you're asking them to do, then they're going to enjoy it just as much.
Yeah.
There was another particular one that was be a child, be one of them. I like that one as well. So, be silly, be spontaneous, you act like them basically.
Yeah, I think kind of losing some of your kind of inhibitions or something like that when you're teaching primary is kind of good, because if you're silly, they kind of respond to it, and it, like you said, it goes back to the kind of making a safe place for the learners, and that's what does it. If you're a little bit silly, then they feel more comfortable in the classroom. There was a nice comment as well about young learners not always learning at the same pace. And that comes back to what you were saying about making the environment safe, Zainab, and kind of thinking about the individual child and, okay, what kind of activity does that learner enjoy, or what kind of activities do the class enjoy? So I think one thing which you can do quite a lot of in primary, I find, is you can experiment a little bit more, like about what kind of activities you do, and you can watch the learners and how they react to them, and then that can tell you whether that, because one thing, yeah, I'd say with primary, because they're not always going to tell you explicitly how they feel, but you can see it, and I think that's one thing that's kind of nice about it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think with young learners, using movement is a really good way of, getting a sense of what would work with some students and what wouldn't. So for example, you can use, sit activities and stir activities, having them draw, match, listen, read, and see how some of the students are working well with these activities. And then obviously you can do some more active activities like moving, mingling, singing, playing a game, and see how that works as well. They learn through demonstration, they learn through movement, they learn through touch. So experimenting with all of that will allow you to get an idea of what would work well with which students.
No, I think that's a really good point, because you mentioned kind of like showing them what to do. And I think sometimes teachers can have a tendency, and I'm sure I do the same, is to explain or to tell. And young learners need to be shown. You need to show them exactly how to do an activity. So when you're a new teacher, think about when you're setting up an activity, how can you show the learners what to do? You need to demonstrate it. You need to maybe do a demonstration with more than one learner, or maybe you do a demonstration with the learner, then that learner does a demonstration with another learner, so they can all see how it works and what you expect.
Yeah.
There was a nice question from Facebook actually about, because it's related to what we're talking about for new teachers. It suggests some fun and easy tactics to control the class. So how can you suggest any, Zaineb, that you would use?
Definitely. Yes,
Okay.
there's so many things you can do with young learners. I mean, as long as what's great about young learners is that they learn through play and having fun, and they don't realize that they're learning when they're playing and having fun. So doing some kind of activity where they're working together to play. So for example, you can have them draw something, build something, play a board game, play a game where they're throwing something into something. Give them instructions such as, touch something blue, show me a happy face, show me a sad face, jump up and down. And I think once they're, focused on playing, you tend to, get you have better classroom management in the classroom. Whereas if you're asking them just to write something or to do a task, they lose focus very quickly. You also want to make sure that whatever you're asking them to do doesn't require too much time. They have very short attention spans. So you want to make sure whatever task you're asking them to do has, many parts to it, where they're doing different things in each part. So because they can't sit for too long, they can't sit and do the same task for too long. So I think as long as you include some kind of play and fun in whatever task you're doing, students will stay focused.
Yeah, and I think it's I think sometimes I wonder sometimes about a word like control, because obviously you need to manage a class, but sometimes the learners, you will have in primary classes students that might not listen. Sometimes they've got something in their head, they're thinking about something else, and like you said, I think one way of managing this is the high kind of turnover of activities. So I think one thing is always, I mean, flashcards are always a classic thing. Most course books might have pictures that you can use, or you can create the flashcards with the learners as well, or draw on the board. But I think it's good to have like a bank of 4 or 5 ways that you can use those flashcards. And then if you run through them quickly in a lesson and the learners get used to those games, then you can use them again and again and go back to them. So, I mean, a classic kind of one with flashcards is obviously kind of, maybe you put them up around the room, the students have to point. If you've got a bit more space, maybe they can move towards the flashcard. You can also put them on the board and ask the students to touch the ones they hear, like you said before. And then you can maybe change it slightly. So the winner who touches the word then says the next word, so they get a bit of speaking time as well. And yeah, just kind of thinking about lots of different ways that you can use flashcards. I mean, one that I kind of like is if you've got a picture, you kind of hide it and maybe slowly reveal it.
Yeah.
So the students have to tell you, or you do it really fast. So you kind of just flip it over like that, super fast. And the students have to tell you what they saw. Just a lot, and that doesn't take very long, and it keeps their attention for like 4 or 5 minutes, and then you go to the next activity.
Yeah. Talking about classroom management also with young learners, I think a lot of young learners also thrive on routines. So having that routine in your class, making sure that you don't have too many unpredictable things happening in the classroom, can usually keep them well behaved and focused in the classroom. So also when they know what's going to happen, when they know what's happening next, they know what routine you follow in their lesson, usually you tend to be able to manage the lesson a lot better.
Yeah, and I think part of those routines is like transitions between activities. Like, is there a place in the classroom where you can stand where the learners know you're about to give an instruction? Is there some kind of hand gesture or something like that? And one thing, for example, I've done in the past, because sometimes I think another comment that came up in the community, which was a really good comment actually, about advice for new teachers, was just to be patient, be patient, be patient. And I think one thing to remember is that they will make noise, and you have to kind of figure out ways of kind of getting their attention. Like it can be simple things like I've put like hands on heads is a very simple one to do. You can even start a chant. I've done that before with different kinds of chants that you can do, just to get you start singing it, and then the students start to get involved, and then you calm them down, you settle them, and then move into the next task.
Yeah. Also, I think with sometimes the reason why you're not able to manage them is because maybe the lesson isn't going how you expected it to. So we create a lesson plan, but then because they're young children, they're unpredictable. Sometimes it just doesn't work. So you have to always be able to, make quick decisions, adapt, change maybe the task that you're doing, because it's just not working with them. And I mean, just like all children, you never know whether it would work or not. So sometimes you just have to adapt and make some changes to what you plan to do, and then you'll notice that they're a lot more focused.
Yeah, and I think it's being confident to kind of bin an activity when it's not working, to just say, right, okay, everyone, it's not working, can we stop? And then have a kind of activity in reserve just in case. I think that's really important. And there's a couple of questions actually, which definitely relate to the question that we were discussing. But there's one here about how do you integrate pronunciation for young learners? Which techniques do you use?
That's a good one.
Yeah, that is definitely a good one. So, Zainab, what kind of pronunciation techniques do you try with your young learners?
Well, because they're young and they pick up the language a lot quicker. I mean, drilling works very well with young learners. I think any type of drilling would work really well. But I think also having them listen to songs. Students love songs. Through songs, storytelling, anything that would give them the opportunity to listen, and then maybe have them repeat some of it or practice with each other. What did this person say? How, I have a puppet. I think you might have a puppet somewhere.
Oh yeah, I've got some puppets with me today. Yeah,
a puppet could be talking to them, and they have to either respond to the puppet or repeat what the puppet said.
Exactly, and I think so. I've got two little puppets. Yeah, so you could use it, for example, because the learners can focus on the puppet when you're drilling, which is kind of nicer for them as well. It's a bit kind of fun. You can also put them in groups for pair drilling, and one person is the puppet, the other person has to say the word, so they can pretend to be like the teacher. I've also done with puppets before is kind of like little mini role plays, or when you're teaching like your learners that kind of day-to-day language of like hello, how are you, that kind of thing. It's kind of useful for that. You had an idea as well as about kind of using the puppet for like a kind of correction thing that you told me about.
Yes.
So could you explain? Yeah.
So for example, you could be the teacher talking to the puppet, but you'd be making mistakes and the puppet would be correcting you. So that would work with pronunciation, or just vocabulary, or just in general. You can the wrong color, the wrong number, but the puppet would correct the mistakes that you make, or vice versa.
Yeah, I mean, you can also use it for kind of classroom management. Maybe you get to the end of an activity, the students are calmed down, but maybe you wanted the learners to maybe act a bit better during an activity. So you could kind of show the puppet and kind of show him how does he feel about the activity, and they can say, oh, he's sad. Okay, why is he sad? And it kind of gets them to kind of discuss the kind of classroom expectations and things like that as well.
Yeah, puppets are great.
Yeah, definitely. You had some other things actually that you showed me a bit earlier about kind of bringing along just to kind of engage the learners.
Yeah, I think engaging with senses, using their senses, I think that's so important with young learners. You can make so much of the language accessible to them by just having them practice it using their senses. So, visual aids, real objects, songs, chants, storytelling, having them touch something, having them move. These are all great ideas to get students to learn. I have here an idea, a mystery box. And this works great with, for students to feel things. So you'd have a mystery box here, and you'd have a number of items in it. and learners would have to put their hand in there, and you would tell them, for example, find something, find a shape, for example, and they'd have to look around until they find a square, for example, and or a circle. Find something hard, and they'd have to feel around until they find something that feels hard. Find something soft, and a sock is soft. Don't find anything else. Or find a classroom item, and they find a pencil, for example. So just having this mystery box, and they feel around to see, or they can also explain how it feels. You can ask them to make it easier, and they just feel around until they show it to you. Or you can ask them, okay, find something in the box, feel it, and tell us how it feels. And then after they explain how it feels, everyone has to guess, for example, what that item is.
I think that's quite nice as well, because you can adapt it for kind of other kinds of activities as well. Like a classic one that I use with primary learners is like the broken telephone idea. So your instructions that you had then, Zaineb, is you would get the students at the front of the class and you would say, find something hard. They would whisper that instruction to the back, and the students at the back would have the box and they'd have to find it and then hold it up and show you. So it's a kind of nice way that you can kind of integrate and mix different types of activities. There was actually some nice comments from Facebook and from YouTube. There's one from Facebook which goes back to the comment about the energy of the teacher that you talked about, Zaineb. So it says, I agree, young learners can definitely sense your energy in the classroom. This will reflect on their performance doing the activities, and I think that's definitely true. There's another one that I quite liked, which was voice tone can also help in controlling the class and attracting their attention. And again, you can definitely do that with your little puppets. You can give them voices when you're doing things. Another thing that
helps them feel safe. Using puppets to get them to calm down makes them feel so safe, more than if you were just to tell them to calm down.
It makes them definitely calm down. And I think one thing I've done with voice tone as well is actually not like you whisper or you say it silently. You just open your mouth, so the students are like, oh, what's the teacher speaking? And that can calm them down quite a lot. There was another question actually that I think is related to this, was how do you encourage shy learners to speak English? And I think one thing about using things like the puppets is that this can help with shy learners, because it's the puppet who's speaking, it's not them. And that can help them kind of with their confidence, and they're taking on a kind of different character. Are there any other ways that we could maybe help shy primary learners?
Well, I think with young learners, especially because they're so young, sometimes it just takes time for them to feel confident enough to start talking. And because students learn at different levels and at different stages, when some students are ready to start speaking or writing, others may not be. So there are ways of including them or making sure they understand without pushing them too much to speak. And when it comes to just checking their understanding, to just making sure that they are participating, you can ask them to match things, sort things, point to things, and you will notice that as they become more comfortable with doing these activities, they will start speaking up more. And I think you just have to give them more space than you would do with older students or adults, because sometimes it does take time for some students to be able to speak or write, but they understand. It's all there. It just takes some time for them to actually verbalize it. So not pushing them too much, giving them activities that they feel comfortable doing, and just, again, being patient. And you will notice that with time, they will start using the language more in the classroom.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that's happened with my daughter, actually. She's quite, when she's in a big classroom, she can be quite timid. But if you put her in a smaller group, she's totally fine. So I think one thing is just to experiment with different kind of, interaction patterns. So using pair work, using small group work of maybe 2, 3, 4 students, and also doing the open class tasks. Because I think sometimes with shy learners, it's the thing that they're shy about is being seen, being watched. And I think giving them the opportunity to do something without being watched is really important. So I think going back to what you said earlier, Zainab, about a kind of high turnover of activities, is doing lots of different kinds of pair work tasks, even if they're very short. I mean, it could literally be you have your flashcards on the board, and then the students just repeat the words to each other as a pair. And then that's going to build confidence anyway, because it's just one word. You're not asking them to kind of explain something complicated. And even like, for example, if you have chunks of language that are written on the board to support the learners. So one game that I do with primary learners, I also do with my kids because they like it, is like, would you rather? So would you rather, you can do it kind of silly, can't you? You can say like, would you rather be a banana or a mango or something like that? But I mean, it is kind of silly, but the response can be really simple. It can literally be mango, and that's it, and that's the end of the activity. And obviously, for stronger learners, you could ask them to say why. I'd like to be a mango because they taste better or something like that. And again, you could put that chunk of language on the board to help the learners so they can look at it and say, I want to be a mango because... And then you could even have some suggested responses. It tastes better, it's sweet, I like the color, something like that. So giving them, and obviously demonstrating it as well, so learners know what they're doing in the classroom.
That's a good point. And I think that answers one of the questions we asked about how do we make primary learners laugh and learn. And a lot of the comments to that was to be silly. The sillier you are, the better they learn. And I have actually just really quickly an idea that you can use with students, just to get them to be silly a bit and help them learn, is just give them flashcards with different parts of a sentence, and then they would just put the flashcards face down, and they'd have to pick one flashcard for each color. So I have yellow and red and green, and they would have to choose one from each and create a sentence. So here we have a monkey is dancing on the moon. So they would be creating silly sentences like this.
Okay. So are they face down, and then you kind of pick them up? Yeah.
They just pick them up and they make random silly sentences.
Okay, that's nice. Because you could adapt that then, and then once they've done that, you could turn all the cards so they are face up, and maybe they're in a small group, like 3 students. One student says a sentence like "a monkey is dancing on the moon," and the other 2 have to pick up the cards as fast as they can, kind of thing. So it's like a kind of race. But yeah, there were lots of comments about that question: what makes young learners laugh and learn? So we've talked about kind of like using puppets, storytelling with silly voices. Learners definitely respond to that, and that definitely helps them with their listening skills, getting used to different accents or different ways of talking. And tongue twisters was one example that was given, or the kind of game like where you say, what am I? So like, okay, I'm green, I'm born on the beach, then I go to the sea, and I live for a long time. What am I? Yeah. Do you know what I am? Okay. A tortoise. A tortoise is born on the beach, goes to the sea, lives for a long time. Anyway, that's okay. But yeah. So thanks. I think we've reached the end. That went quite quickly, actually. And thanks for all your comments, everyone. And it's been great having you here. If we didn't reply to any of your comments or questions, we'll definitely reply to them in the community. So thank you for that. If you haven't done the course Teaching English in Primary, it's running now. You can download a workbook to find lots of extra resources and activity ideas, and you can do the course itself as well. Obviously, in the community, we are discussing issues around teaching primary in the classroom. So please come and discuss them with us. We'd love to hear from you. And next week we have another event, Zaineb, don't we?
Yes, we do. We have is it communicative tasks? A deep dive on communicative tasks.
Yeah, so we'll be putting a question in the group this week, so please look out for that, and then we can hopefully focus the event on something that you'd like to learn about, so it helps you with your professional development. Okay, so thank you very much, everyone. It was lovely having you all here. Have a good week, and we'll see you all next Tuesday.
All right, thank you so much for joining. Bye-bye, everyone.